Produced by Liang Gu, Detective D. Chongping entered the official rank for the first time to appeal to the people for their grievances. The poem says, "The world likes to be a high official. It is easy to enforce the law and difficult to solve the case. Lu Du is generous and fierce, but he is still evil and harsh. A pure heart brings happiness to thousands of families. 2 words, fairness and peace to the people." Only Yin, the old magistrate of Chongping, left a copy of the biography for future generations to read. Since there is no way to escape from the king's law for committing adultery, stealing and adultery, any injustice will be done to the official's family. Therefore, if the official is clean, the people will be safe. The people are safe and the customs are beautiful. Take all those who are idle and make trouble, sweep it away. Regardless of whether the common people are enjoying themselves or earning a living, there will be unscrupulous people who show their respect for the law, and their punishment will be intolerable, and their crimes will be unforgivable. Hearing and seeing the words of rewarding good and punishing evil, it is advisable to change one's face and cleanse one's mind and get rid of old habits. Therefore, we want the people to change. It is necessary to wait for the governor to be upright. There is no official who is not upright, and he can transform the people. However, the official's purity. It is not only about not harming wealth and people, but also about being able to protect the country at the top, doing things that others cannot and dare not do, and governing the people at the bottom, so as to avenge the grievances that others cannot and cannot easily avenge. Regardless of the details of the folk affairs, that is, the details of the palace. He also calmly observes, has a shrewd spirit, and has the ability to be decisive, and then his official reputation will be good, his official position will be upright, and everything will be clear and clear. Therefore, when a country is established in one generation, there must be a generation of executioners. In the time of Yao and Shun, there was Gao Tao, and in the time of Han Dynasty, there was Xiao He. His disciples Shen Buhai and Han Fizi were the ancestors of famous punishment masters in the past dynasties. If you don't investigate the origin of the case, just saw it with a canopy knife at the beginning, and blindly seek torture, then even if it is said to be short-lived, the injustice will be overturned and the world will be repaid by the clear sky. Not happy at all. If you do it again because of bribery. For the sake of greed, they often take the initiative to use 5 pieces of wood or cut off a few words. If they do not cultivate themselves, they can govern the country and the people, clear the palaces at the top, and bring peace to the people below. How can it be achieved? I have a chance to read about the past and present, and learn a lot about wild history. There is something that cannot be judged as non-existent, and one cannot believe in something that exists. The wisdom of investigating cases, the strangeness of committing crimes, the details of investigating cases, and the gods of solving cases compiled in this book may be due to filth and filth in the erotic palace, or they may want to spend their later years, or they may kill themselves for the sake of wealth. Either he commits adultery to become an enemy, or he accidentally takes poison and dies suddenly, or he makes a joke and suspects that he is the culprit. All of them are innocently involved at being tortured. He has to find someone to vindicate him, change his words and be convinced, and carefully investigate his every detail. Yang is the official, Yin is the ghost. At the end of the year, his love was discovered, his case was settled, his injustice was vindicated, and he was vindicated, and he ended up in a strange prison that could not be understood in the end. The spring breeze is tiring, and the days are idle. Therefore, the original copy of this book is specially prepared for recording and for public viewing. I dare not say that it is a warning to the world. Also talk about the loneliness of those who read it. The poem says, contains strange things and admires the past generations. Those who are honest and fair will redress injustices throughout the ages. Talk about this book. It comes from the reign of Emperor Zhongzong of the Tang dynasty, when Empress Wu came to court and there were many troubles in all directions. There was a minister in the dynasty, his surname was Di, his name was Renjia, his name was Dang, and he was from Taiyuan County, Shaanxi Province. He was very upright and loyal to protect the country. He held the position of Minister Pingzhang. Zhang Jianji and others were all recommended by him. Just because Wu Sanxi advocated chaos in the imperial court, the Empress Dowager wanted to depose Zhongzong and make him his heir. Di Renjia offended Yan Lizhang and wrote a memorial, saying that your majesty will establish a prince and live forever in the Taimiao temple. If you stand up and think twice, from ancient times to the present. I had never heard of the idea that my nephew could be my husband and my aunt could be worshipped in a big temple, so I suddenly realized that except for this idea, I retired from the government and Emperor Zhongzong called Renjia the elder of the country and moved to the governor of Yuzhou. When Zhongzong ascended the throne, he was also granted the title of Liang Guogong. These are all events in his life. Since the Tang dynasty, everyone has respected him and said he was a loyal minister. Little did they know that there were many events at this time, all of which were recorded in the history books of the past dynasties, so it is easy for future generations to know. There are also those things that are not recorded in the history of the country, but are passed down in the history of the country, it is even more admirable to say that he is not only a loyal minister, but also a follow-up official, and he is also a gentleman who is smart, sophisticated, benevolent and righteous. Therefore, since Empress Wu acceded to the throne, she has been almost eccentric, killing loyal and good people, killing her sisters and brothers, regicide and her mother-in-law. Down to the strange cases among the people, Di Gong judged and understood them all. Since his parents gave birth to him, he was 6 or 7 years old. Just born smart. It goes without saying that when studying books, one should look at 10 lines visually. By the time he was 18 years old, he had gained a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of talents. Bingzhou government. After hearing his literary name, he first cited the Ming dynasty, and then transferred him to Bianzhou to join the army. He was also promoted to Bingzhou Law Chao. Because he was an upright official, the imperial court moved him to Chongping Jinin. When he takes office, it is his remaining business to eliminate violence and clean up the lawsuits in the local area. He has 4 personal followers. One is named Xiao, Mrs. Xiao, and the other is named Ma Rong. These 2 are wealthy people in the Green Forest. That day when he went to Beijing for business, he met 2 people who wanted to rob him of his clothes and luggage. When Renjie saw Ma Rong and Mrs. Xiao, they both looked heroic. Moreover, he was very skilled in martial arts, so he thought to himself, why don't I conquer them, and in the future I will contribute to the royal family and do a great job, and the 2 of them can help each other, so as not to bury this skill. At that time, not only did he not avoid it. Instead, he stood up and called for them to stand down, but Li persuaded him. Unexpectedly, Ma Rong and Mrs. Xiao were very grateful. Said, we are thieves because of the chaos in the world and the rule of rebellious ministers. We only have this ability, and we have no choice but to meet someone who knows it. Therefore, Luo Chao is considered a bandit, so he comes up with this strategy. Since I respect you so much, I am willing to follow the whip and hold the stirrup. Serve the honorable public. At that time, Renjie took the 2 of them as his personal followers. The remaining person's surname is Hong, named Hong Liang, which is a surname from Bingzhou. He has been working in the Di family since he was a child. Although he does not have the ability to use force, he is a bold and careful person who is willing to go forward no matter what. When it's time to do things, you can make assumptions and not be reckless. This person has been with him the longest. There was another person named Tao Qian, who was also a friend in the Jianghu. Later he changed his ways and became a servant of the public servant. Since there are many relatives and enemies, people often come to take revenge. So he joined Judge Di. Become close friends with Ma Rong and others. After taking office in Chongping, these 4 people took him on secret visits and settled many difficult cases. On this day, I was in the back hall, watching the official business going on, when I suddenly heard something from the hall. Someone beat the drum, knowing that there was a case, and hurriedly put on the crown and belt and went to the court. 2 teams of officials gathered below. I saw a common man in his 40s or 50s, looking anxious and sweating, and he couldn't stop complaining in the hall. Di Renjie then ordered someone to take him away. He knelt down in front of the case and asked, who is your surname? What grievances do you have? If you don't wait for the court to accuse you, why are you beating the drum at this time? The man said, the villain's surname is Kong, and his name is Wan. Germany. Just outside the south gate of Chongping County, Lu Wan lived. There are several houses in a family, just because there are fewer people and more rooms. So he opened an inn, and for decades it was safe and sound. Yesterday at dusk, there were 2 customers selling silk. It is said that he is from Huzhou. He was passing by this place because he was doing some shopping on the road. As it was getting late, he wanted to stay in this store. The villain saw that he was a passing guest. He stayed there at that time. Drinking and talking and laughing in the evening are known to everyone. It was getting dark this morning, so they both got up and left. At Chinpai time, suddenly Hugh came to report, saying, there are 2 corpses at the entrance of the town. They were killed underground. They were guests of your shop. You must be seeking wealth and harming life. Put him to death and drag his body at the entrance of the town to cause harm to others. I didn't allow the villain to argue, so I dragged the 2 corpses to the door of the villain's house, threatened me, and ordered me to pay 500 silver taels before I could cover up the matter. Otherwise these 2. He left from your shop. Why did a strange case happen in this town? This is not your removal of corpses and traces of them. Therefore, the villain is in a hurry and has come to seek justice from the great master. Di Renjie listened to his words. Looking at him from top to bottom, he didn't look like a murderer. Unfortunately, this is a serious human life case. We can't let him go just because of his words. Nido. Since you say you are a good citizen of this place, why didn't this person say anyone else, but just you? I think you are not a kind person, and this county will never be able to trust you. and bring the ground armor to nuclear seizure. The officer below agreed and saw a man in his 30s. He came forward, with evil lines on his face, and wore a green dress diagonally. He knelt down in front of the case and said, "The villain is the 6th concubine, Djia Hud. I see the master to say hello. This case is under the jurisdiction of the villain. Next, I saw these 2 corpses this morning." Killing Jinko, it was not known where the guest was at that time. Later, people from Hejin came to watch. They all said that he was a customer who stayed at Kong's store last night, so the villain questioned him. If he hadn't killed himself for money, why were both killed in the town? Moreover, Kong Wanda said that when he set off, the sky would be bright, and there should be people walking in the town by then, even on the road. When meeting a strong man, has no one ever seen this? Ask the store in town. No cry for help was heard. This is an obvious plot. He obviously did it at night, killed the 2 people, dragged them to the entrance of the town, and removed their bodies to eliminate any trace of them. This is the responsibility of the villain, and the murderer is already here. Just ask the master to interrogate me. When Direnjia heard what Huda said, he was very reasonable. He turned around and saw that Kong Wanda was not a murderous person who wanted money and life, and said, "You 2 have given different confessions. This county has not verified them, so we can't. Let's decide after that." Another interrogation. As he said that, the 2 of them took him there. Immediately, he sent an order to serve him and prepared to go for inspection. I don't know what happened next, but he'll break it down next time. The second time Hudijia falsely accused himself and Hong Duda made excuses to find out, the second time. It is said that Di Renjia took Huda and Kong Wanda with him and prepared to go to see each other. After he resigned from the court, he was handed over as a widower, given 3 bangs, and wore Yuan uniform. He brought his officer's ID and came straight to Luwan. All the inhabitants of that road. When they heard that there was a murder case, everyone knew that Duke D was an upright official and would definitely redress injustices. People came in groups, following his sedan chair, to watch. By afternoon, we had arrived in town. Zhao San, Huda's assistant, had already prepared a mansion with the township director Guoliwen. "Come and greet." Di Gong first asked 2 ordinary questions, then got off the sedan chair and said, "Let us go to the Kong family in this county for an inspection. Then come on stage and start testing." After saying that, he arrived at the door of the inn first, and saw 2 corpses lying below, dead from stab wounds. Immediately, Huda asked, "Did this corpse originally fall here?" When Huda saw Judge D, he asked this question first. He hurriedly reported back, "Your Grace, this is Kong Wanda's intention to harm people, so he killed the corpse and dumped it at the entrance of the town so that he could deny it later. A villain can't involve innocent people. So he still moved it in front of his house. Please ask me, Your Majesty. Observe clearly." Judge D didn't wait for him to finish and shouted at that time, "You bitch, this county doesn't ask who is the murderer. Since you are a public servant, how can you know the law and break the law? Do you know what the crime is for removing a corpse? Regardless of Kong Wanda, it is intentional to harm people. Since he abandoned the body at the entrance of the town, you should report it to the county first and explain the reason. Only after the county has inspected it can you ask for permission to seal it. Why do you defy the king's law and dare to move these 2 corpses here? This is intentional and deceptive. It can be seen, otherwise, he would be colluding with him to cause harm, and because of the unfair division of the spoils, he would be the first to take the lead. This county will first punish you severely, and then torture you severely." He ordered the officers to give him 200 beatings with the cane. Immediately, he screamed, and his skin and flesh were torn. All the people in that town, knowing that Kong Wanda was unjustly accused and framed by Huda, but it was a human life case, he did not dare to get involved in the case. At this time, seeing Duke D's method, everyone was impressed and said, "Sure enough, he lived up to his reputation. What a shrewd and honest official." The defeat of Hood was completed at that time. He still insisted on his words, but Duke D was just demanding and brought everyone to the Kong family and asked Kong Wanda, "Although your family has dozens of houses, you can tell me which house yesterday's guest lived in." Kong Wanda said, "There are only 3 rooms behind, where the villain and his wife live with my daughter. The 2 rooms on the east are kitchens, these 5 rooms. Never stay with guests, only advance with the same progress and let guests stay. The 2 guests came yesterday. The villain, because he was a silk seller, could not help but always have money. It is not appropriate to move forward, so he is asked to live in Zhongjin." After saying this, he led Mr. D to Zhongjin and pointed to the house above. Duke D and everyone went in to take a closer look and saw something on the table. There were traces of food and wine that had not been removed, and there were 2 chamber pots placed in front of the bed. Read it again. There was no trace of it, and he was afraid that what he said was untrue, so he asked, "Since you have opened an inn here for decades, many passers-by must stay here. Is it possible that there were only 2 of them yesterday and no other guests?" "What?" Kong Wanda said. "There are also 3 guests. One is going to Shaanxi to sell fur goods. The other 2 are master and servant. They have arrived here from Hunan, but are now sick here and are still sleeping on the way." At that time, Duke Di first brought the fur trader to inquire, saying, "My surname is Gao, my name is Qing Yuan, and I have been doing this for many years." They all stayed here. The 2 guests yesterday went out at dawn. No shouting was heard during the night, and we really don't know why he died. He brought the servant back again and said the same thing, adding that the master was sick. "I haven't slept well all night. If there is no other reason, how can there be no movement?" Everyone in Duke Di's audience said in unison that it was not Kong Wanda who killed him, and he was even more confused. He had to go back and take a closer look at the place, but there was still no trace. He said in his heart, "This case is obviously a death outside. If in this house, the 3 people were all trying to deny each other, how could they not be there at all? I was confused and had to come out. When we arrived at the entrance of the town, we saw that the place where they had been killed was full of blood, scattered everywhere, to the left and right. There was no one living there, so the residents near the town had to be brought in for interrogation. They all said they didn't know the plot. Because I had seen the passerby coming earlier, I knew that this case had occurred, so I called Dijia and investigated carefully, only to find out that he was a guest in the Kong family store." Judge Di thought to himself, "Could it be that this guy did it? It's getting late at this time, so I can't test it. I'll pay a close visit overnight to see what's going on, and we'll discuss it again tomorrow morning." After thinking about it, he headed towards the township director said, "There have always been cases in this county that are always questioned and settled as soon as they arrive, so we have to report them today," then came to investigate. "However, this murder case is so serious that it cannot be properly investigated unless it is conducted during the day. The county will stay here temporarily for 1 night and conduct an examination tomorrow." Instructing the officers to watch carefully, he went to the mansion and had a talk with the township director Guo Liwen. "Call everyone to leave," then General Hong Liang called out and said, "This case was definitely not done by Kong Wanda. The county is afraid that after Hood has done this, he will take the lead and harm others. Please go and have a closer look and report back quickly." Hong Liang immediately took the order and came out. I found Xiao San, the guy from Dijia. He also met a police officer on duty and said, "I am following the master to handle this case. There is no family to blame, and there is no victim. I can see that Mr. Kong is an injustice. Although we are people eating at the public door. You can't be a good person innocently. At this time, you are already hungry. Hood is the best in this place. Why don't you prepare a glass of wine? It's not for nothing that we've been bothering you. Who knows the uncle's integrity? After I return to the yamen tomorrow. Always provide food and drinks for work. We will have to pay it back at that time. Are we really going to starve now?" Zhao San heard Hong Liang's words and hurried up to greet him. "Don't be angry, Hong Dutu. This is our local agent who is involved in the case. Forget about asking people to prepare. That is to say, the generals and everyone are hungry. Please give me a drink. Just have a random meal at a restaurant on East Street in town." After saying that, he sent 2 more people to guard the corpse, and he and everyone came to the restaurant. When the waiters saw that this was the county gate, they knew that they were here for a murder case, so they hurried up to ask questions. "Put lots of food and wine on the table." Hong Liang said, "I am not an ordinary police officer. When we encounter a case, we eat and drink a lot." He took the victim's money and then extorted some silver coins. "Just serve 2 ordinary meals and have 2 glasses of wine, and forget it. The total amount of rice money will be given to you later." As he said, everyone sat down. Hong Liang knew clearly that after Hudo was beaten, he took Mrs. Chiao and Ma Rong into custody at Kong's house. At that time, he said to Zhao San, "Your boss is too negligent. Why was he not at home last night? I'm coming back today. Know this case. I just thought that Mr. Kong had a lot of money, but he refused, so he came up with this vicious plan and moved his body in front of his house. Isn't it too cruel? Where did he go last night? This is right in front of you. How come you are on guard duty? Can't you patrol? Now the master has beaten him 200 times, and tomorrow he will be forced to hand over the murderer. Do you think this is asking for trouble?" Zhao San said, "You don't know what's inside, do too, because you are not outsiders. So I dare to say this. Because our local Jia has a grudge against Mr. Kong, he is only willing to give a few copper coins on New Year's Day. If we want to exchange a penny with him at ordinary times, he can't do it. Last night Huda was gambling at Lizialuzi's house. Lost a lot of debt. By daybreak, just as he was unable to escape, suddenly the town became noisy and a murder was reported. He found out that he was from the Kong family, so he came up with the idea of taking revenge. I knew it was not Wanda, but I wanted to blackmail him, but I was scolded. Wouldn't it be that if you fail to harm others, you will harm yourself instead? But this case is really strange. It obviously happened in the morning. I just came back from there after making corrections, and this happened before I woke up. Although Mr. Kong is a stingy person, I think this matter. He would never dare to do it. After hearing these words, Hong Liang also vaguely agreed. He thought that according to what he said, it was not Huda, but he wanted to blackmail him for a few taels of silver. Now that what he wanted has been accomplished, he has been punished 200 times, which can be considered as a punishment. But I don't know who the murderer is, so the matter is not easy to solve. Immediately he wolfed down the wine and rice, calculated the accounts, and told him to collect them at the mansion tomorrow. He said goodbye to everyone, went to the front of Duke D, and said what he had just said. Judge D said, "This case is very strange. If it wasn't Wanda's doing, these two people must have exposed the money elsewhere first, and were seen by the gangsters who followed him here. When he was waiting for his departure this morning, they were caught off guard and lost their lives. Otherwise, why would they both be killed at the entrance of the town? This county is both the parents of the people that, only by redressing the grievances of the deceased can we deal with the king and the people. Let's wait and see what happens after the test tomorrow, then we can check and seize it." Hong Liang withdrew at that time, waiting for the test to begin tomorrow morning. I don't know what happened next, but I'll break it down next time. In the third episode, Kong Wan's autopsy revealed that Di Renjia was wrongly selling medicine. But said that after listening to Hong Liang's words, Judge D knew that it was not Huda's doing, so he had to wait until tomorrow for an examination to verify. A night without words. I got up early the next morning to freshen up and have breakfast, order someone to wait at the corpse field. All the servants had already arrived at the door of Kong's house. After a while, Judge D walked out of the mansion and sat down in the publican. First, he ordered Mr. Kong to be brought up and said, "Although you don't know the plot of this case, you can't stay out of it since you left your apartment, and tell me the names of these two people so that they can be examined by name." Mr. Kong a few words. When the two men checked into the store the night before, the villain also asked him. One said his surname was Su, and the other said his surname was Cho. Because I was in a hurry to unload my luggage, I didn't have time to ask her name. Judge D nodded and marked the words, "Man surnamed Su," with a red pen. He was ordered to examine the corpse in advance. I saw Wu Zhuo leading Zhu Biao to the scene. On the scene, he first carried the body on the left, Zhao San and the servant on duty to the middle, and reported to Di Gong. "Is this person's surname Su? Please bring Kong Wanda to come and have a look." Di Gong immediately asked Mr. Kong to go to the court to watch. Although the old man was frightened, he had to walk to the court cautiously. Then he saw a bloody human head attached to the corpse. The facial features were stained with blood and soil. He reluctantly looked at it and said, "This is the guest who stayed the night before." After hearing the report, Wu Zhuo took 6 or 7 reed mats and laid them on the ground, and placed the body on it. First, he washed away the blood all over his body with hot water and examined it carefully. I only heard the report, "A male corpse, dash." There was a stab wound on the shoulder and back, 2 and 8 inches in diameter and 4 inches wide. There was a fall wound on the left rib, 5 inches deep and 5 inches wide. There was a stab wound on the throat. The diameter is 3 inches to 1 minute, the width is 6 points, and the depth is equal to the diameter. It treats life. After the report was completed, the execution room filled up the body and presented it on the case. Judge D looked at it once. Then he got down from the public seat and looked at the corpse for a week. It was just as reported. Immediately, the seal was issued, and someone took the coffin to stay temporarily and showed his confession. He sat down again and named Xiao with a red pen. Wu Zhuo still followed the previous practice and sent down the batch. Lift the second body up and show Mr. Kong to see it. When Mr. Kong arrived on the field, he lowered his head to look. He couldn't help but do somersaults and fell to the ground in fright. His eyes looked up and he couldn't say what he was saying. Mr. D saw this. "I know there's something else going on." Ling Hongliang hurriedly helped him up, waited for him to regain consciousness, and explained the situation again. Above the corpse field, everyone was silent, looking at Mr. Kong, waiting for him to wake up and find out what was going on. At this time, Hongliang helped him sit on the ground. He quickly ordered his wife to get a cup of sugar tea. There were many idle people surrounding him, eager to finish the inspection immediately so that they could return to the city. Suddenly they saw Mr. Kong falling to the ground. They were also suspicious when they saw him. After a while, after finally regaining his breath, he muttered, "No, no. It's not good. Wrong, wrong." Hong Liang hurriedly asked, "Old man, please calm down, I'm waiting for you up here." "Excuse me, who is wrong?" The old man said, "This corpse is wrong. The man named Xiu the night before was a young man. He already had a beard. Who was the guest staying in the hotel? This person is obviously in the wrong. Please quickly seek justice." Wu Zhua and Hong Liang heard this. Already frightened and suspicious, he immediately returned to Duke Di. Judge Di said, "Why didn't he identify these two corpses? They were here yesterday. Why didn't he identify them? At this time, they suddenly changed them during the inspection. Isn't it just nonsense on his part?" Then he brought Mr. Kong to the case and asked angrily. Kong Lauer was so anxious that he kowtowed and cried loudly, saying, the villain himself was harmed by Hood. When he saw the two corpses moved at the door, he was extremely anxious. He hurriedly went to the city to report the crime. Nezhang looked at the corpse carefully. Moreover, this man fell under the person named Su. Seeing that the person named Su was not bad, he thought he was also good. Unexpectedly, this suspicious case came out. The villain is really innocent and always begs for grace. Judge Di saw him saying this. I thought to myself, I came to see the corpse yesterday, but I fell up and down in front of it. Since he said it was a mistake, it is reasonable, but this matter is difficult. Let's bring Huda to inquire carefully. At that time, I greeted Dai Dijia. When Hood heard about him, he was wounded by tortured. Together with Mrs. Chiao, they stepped forward. Judge Di said, "You are a doghead, you removed the bodies and framed them for false accusations. Since you said these two people were killed by Kong Wanda, you moved them from Jinri yesterday. I must have seen the faces of these corpses with my own eyes. What are these two people like? Hurry up and report them." At this time Hood had heard. He said it was a mistake. Now that Duke Di asked him this, he was deeply afraid of finding the murderer and himself, so he hurriedly reported. Because the villain went out of his shop and was close to the hurricane, he was said to have killed him. The corpse was indeed that of a young man, and that one had a beard. Because Kong Wanda refused to obey the villain, the two of them stopped and hurried into the city. Even in one place. As for whether he is wrong or not, I have never met the villain the night before and dare not say nonsense. Judge Di then beat Huda 100 more times, saying that he failed to report the crime clearly and was instead implicating the people. Immediately, the three guests were called for questioning, and they all said that the two of them the night before were young men. The bearded one had not yet joined the shop. He did not know where he was from or why he died. Judge said, in that case, this county has understood it. Immediately, he was sent back for examination. He had no choice but to follow the law, wash away the blood stains, and report to the police. The body of an unknown man is a corpse. There is a bruise on his left hand, 2 inches and 8 inches wide. There is a fall on his back, 3 inches in diameter and 5 inches and 1 minute wide. With the help of the knife, the wound was 1 inch 3 inch wide, 5 inch and 6 inch wide, and 2 inch deep. Cure life. After his death, he suffered a stab wound on his chest, measuring 2 and 8 inches wide and 8 inches wide. After the report was completed, the execution room was filled with corpses. Judge Di said, this coffin will be placed here. This person's family members are probably not far away from here. The county will seal the case first and show a confession. Once the murderer is caught, the case will be finalized. Kong Wanda was released on bail and confronted before the case, but Huda was detained first. The instructions have been completed. Then he left the 6 concubines and went all the way to the city. He first went to the county temple to burn incense, then returned to the yamen, where he was promoted to the public seat. An official document came out, record the body size and image of the original case. The document was transferred to Huzhou and ordered to visit his family, and then he asked his neighbors to seize him. After finishing all these official matters, Fang sent Mrs. Chiao and Marong to say, this case has been revealed in this county, and it must be the person named Xiu. This person must be arrested before the case can be solved. You two will immediately go to visit and report back as soon as you get it. The two of them took the order and went forward, called Hong Liang again and said, that nameless corpse. I am afraid that he is from this place. You should visit the surrounding areas of the 4 villages. It is also feared that the murderer may not have traveled far away, but may have disappeared in the countryside, waiting for the wind to subside, and then escaping. After Hong Liang took the order, he went there for several days. None can be visited. Judge Di said anxiously, since I came to this county, I have solved many suspicious cases. There is clearly a clue to this matter, so why is it so difficult to solve it? Let's wait for a personal visit from this county before we can make a decision. After thinking about it, spent the night. Early the next morning, he changed into Wei Xing's clothes, pretended to be a medicine seller, brought a lot of medicinal herbs, and left the government office. First, I went to the big towns and markets along Guan Road in Nanxiang. After walking for half a day, no one asked me anything. I thought to myself, I'll find a spacious shop, buy this herb, and see if anyone comes. Thinking about it, I arrived at a market town ahead, although it was not as lively as the cities. But it is also Guantang Road, where merchants and officials gather. I saw an archway in the northeast corner with the words, Huanghua Town, written on it. Entering the archway, there is a large high wall opposite the door, and a gate tower appears in the middle. In front of the door is a square sign with the word Dai Dang written on it. Judge D said. It turned out to be a pawn. I saw that the place was quite spacious, and I opened the medicine package to see if someone would come to heal me. After thinking about it, he stood against the high wall, took out the medicinal herbs, first put the piece of cloth on the ground, and then put all the medicinal herbs. On top of the bunk, he stood still and sang loudly. I go back and forth from north to south, only to be happy and not to worry. There is a lack of magic in the world, and there is no freedom when illness comes. My surname is Ren, and I am a native of Taiyuan, Shaanxi. Sure. Since childhood, he has read many strange books and studied medical science intensively. Although he is not the reincarnation of Huatua, he still has the legacy of Bien Quebec regardless of male or female side Polstot. Various internal and external departments, as well as difficult and complicated diseases, can be understood at a glance, and the right medicine can be prescribed as long as you look at the following. In mild cases, the effect will be seen immediately, and in severe cases, the disease will be cured within 3 days. Today, a group of visiting friends are here to save the world and make a name for themselves. If anyone is sick, please come and ask for advice. Yelled for a while, dash. A group of idlers had gathered early and formed a circle. Judge D took a closer look. They were all rural households, talking to each other. There was a middle-aged woman in the crocodile, hunched over, squeezed in the crowd. Looking at Mr. D after he finished speaking, he stepped forward and asked, "Sir, is that so?" Said, "I think all old illnesses can be cured." Judge D said, "Of course. If you don't have such means, how can you run around and make such big words? If you have any illness, you can tell me clearly and I will cure you." The woman said, "Sir, you can tell at a glance. My disease is in my heart. I wonder if sir can be cured?" Judge D said, "Why not? You have a heart disease, and I have a heart medicine. Turn your face and let me take a closer look." As she said this, the woman turned her face outward. Judge D, because he is a woman. After all, he is an official. Although he is here to investigate the case, he does not look good among this crowd. He immediately took a look and said, "I know about your illness. I see that your face is dry and yellow, and the veins are exposed. This is a sign of liver deficiency. I suffered from depression in the past, which over time caused liver qi, disordered diet, and frequent heartache. Are you heartbroken?" When the woman saw that he revealed the cause of the disease, she quickly said, "Sir, you are really a genius. I have been suffering from this disease for 3 or 4 years. No one has ever figured out the reason for this. Since you know it, don't you know if there is any medicine?" Duke D saw that she believed her and wanted to find out what she was saying. "I don't know what this woman said. I'll explain it next time." The 4th chapter is about an entry-level medical doctor who becomes suspicious when he sees a young girl who has become mute. But he said that Judge D saw that the woman believed in his medical knowledge, and wanted to understand her tone, so he asked, "Since you have been ill for several years, don't you have a husband or son? If I ask someone to heal you, will I be forced to live with your illness and prolong your life?" When the woman asked, she sighed and said, "It's sad to say that my husband died a long time ago and left behind a son who is 28 years old this year. It has been 8 years since I opened a small yarn shop in this town and married my daughter-in-law. Last May during the Dragon Boat Festival, I was enjoying the afternoon at home. In the afternoon, I took my wife and my granddaughter out to watch the Dragon Boat show. In the evening, my son was as usual. After dinner, suddenly there is pain in the abdomen. I thought it was caused by the heat, so I asked my wife to help him sleep. Unexpectedly, when they reached Urgu, they suddenly heard him shouting. My wife started crying and said that he was dead. Pity my mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, it's like the sky has stepped down. Seeing this, Zong Si died. Although I opened a small shop, I didn't have much capital, so how could I use the money to do things? With great difficulty, I moved here and there and buried my son. But when he was about to die, his eyes, as big as lamp beads, were exposed. Sorry, I'm sad. I cried bitterly day and night, suffering from this heartbreaking disease. After listening to what he said, Judge D was suspicious. Although it may not be the warm season in May, why did he scream before he died, and why were his eyes exposed during the burial season? Is there some other reason behind it? I am here today to investigate the case, and it is not known whether Chiu, the person named Chiu, has not visited the case and has redressed his grievances on his behalf. Naito said, according to this, your disease is more serious. If it is caused by stagnation alone, even though it is the original disease, it can be easily treated. This is the heartbreak of flesh and blood. How can it be temporarily cured and the resentment and suffering in one's heart comes out? Although I have medicine to treat it at this time, I need to boil the medicine myself, mix it with water, and take it with you to be effective. How can it be so troublesome on this street now? I wonder if you definitely want to be treated? If we want to eradicate this disease, I have to boil this medicine at your home to get it right. After hearing what he said, the woman hesitated for a long time and said, Sir, you are so willing to go. Should my illness mean that I will leave my body? But there is one thing that I need to explain to my husband. Since the death of my son, my daughter-in-law takes great pains to observe the rules and rarely sees outsiders. In the afternoon, she closes the door tightly. Whenever outsiders came in, she would make a lot of noise. She said, the young woman asked, why did my mother-in-law let these people come to my house, so those relatives in my family? Everyone knew this, and no man ever came to her house. Recently, even the female relatives have stopped coming. There are only my mother-in-law and my daughter-in-law at home. They are together in the morning and in their own rooms in the afternoon. If you go, sir, you will only boil the medicine in the main room. After boiling the medicine, please go out immediately. Otherwise she will quarrel with me again. After hearing this, Duke D became even more confused and thought, there are some temperate people in the world, but she went too far. It is right for a man not to talk to her when he comes. Why didn't even the female relatives come to her door? And close the door tightly in the afternoon? This is a suspicious case. I will allow her to go and see what her wife is doing. After thinking about it, he said, it's rare for your wife to be so chaste. It's really respectable. I'm only here to treat your illness, I just want to boil the medicine. Then he came out and had a bowel movement. When the woman saw that he agreed, she was even more happy and said, I'll go back and tell you first, and then I'll invite you. Duke D was afraid that he would stop his wife from going back, so he hurriedly said, there is no need to do this. I will finish boiling the medicine soon, and I have to rush to the city, to do some business. I'm sorry you are such a miserable person, but you don't have much money. To reward me is just to make you famous. I'll just go with you. As he spoke, he picked up the medicine bag, said goodbye to everyone, and followed the woman. After passing 3 or 4 narrow alleys, there was a small house in front of it. There is a low door facing north, and a girl is standing in front of it. When I was about 6 or 7 years old, I saw the woman coming from a distance. I was very happy and ran to greet her. When he got in front of her, he grabbed the woman's sleeves and screamed randomly, unable to say a word. That finger was drawing here and there. I don't know why. Seeing that she was mute, Judge D said, Who are you, this little child? Why can't he speak? Is this how he was born? After saying that he had reached the door, the woman pushed the door open first. It's like reporting a message face to face. Fearing that his wife would avoid him, Judge D hurriedly entered the gate and found that there were 3 houses. When the door of the next room rang, I saw half of a woman looking out, but she happened to be facing Mr. D. Judge D also took a look. But seeing that daughter-in-law, he is also under 30 years old. Although he is dressed in plain clothes, his lustful eyes are shining, which really makes people disappear. The eyebrows are slightly raised, and the face is snow white. The light red color appeared slightly on the cheeks, but it was born from nature. I saw a stranger coming in, he was about to shrink back and close the door tightly with a bang. I just heard someone scolding me in front of me, old bitch. Even the medicine seller came to the door. I have been quiet for a few days, but today I am going to be noisy all night again. I don't know where the cause is. When Judge D saw this look, he already guessed. This woman must not be a good person, there is always a reason why. Now that I'm here, no matter how much I criticize you, I still want to find out the root cause. At that time, he sat down and said, This is my first visit to the mansion. I don't know the surname of the gentleman, but this girl just now. I guess it must be your granddaughter. When the woman asked, she had to answer, My family name is Bai, and my son's scientific name is Bai Shun. Unfortunately, after his death, only this 8-year-old granddaughter was left. Then she dragged the girl in front of her, I couldn't help but burst into tears. Judge D said, "It's getting late now, so you can light up the stove and prepare the decoction." "But how did your granddaughter become mute?" Old woman Bai said, "It's all a misfortune to the family. She has been so smart in every possible way since she was born. When I was 5 or 6 years old, I was very articulate. Even after his father died, less than 2 months later, when he woke up that morning, he looked like this. No matter what else matters. Although my heart is white, I can't express it. A good child has become a waste. Isn't it a misfortune for the family?" Judge D said, "Who was she sleeping with at that time? Could it be that someone wanted medicine to make her mute? You don't even know. If someone is dumb from medicine, I can help." Before the woman could answer, she only heard her daughter-in-law scolding in the room. "The sky is clear and the sun is shining brightly. Talking nonsense invisible and invisible. This is not the way to defraud people of their money. My daughter is always with me, who can help her? From ancient times to the present, we have only heard of people treating veterinarians, but we have never seen anyone who can heal mutes. This old bitch only cares about temporary happiness. He brought this man for medical treatment without asking who he was. Listen to him talking nonsense like this. Even after his son died, he was not sad, and he couldn't bear to see the widow and his daughter-in-law in peace, so she kept nagging her." The woman heard her daughter-in-law yelling and cursing in the room, but she didn't dare to speak. Judge D thought, "This woman must have an outsider, because the old woman cannot recognize people and thinks she is sincere. In my opinion, her son must be killed by her. There is no chaste woman in the world who is not a filial woman, since her husband is the most important thing. The husband's mother is sick. Is there any reason not to allow her to be treated? Since this girl was her own child, even though she had become mute, there was no reason why she did not want her to recover. When you hear that someone can heal someone, you should be very happy. When I came out to ask, why didn't I care at all and instead kept scolding people? That is, these two ends. It's obviously a flaw. I don't need to be alarmed. I'll go back to the street and pay more attention." At that time, he stood up and said, "Although I am a friend who has traveled around the world, you also need to convince others before you can heal them. This woman in your family hurts people for no reason, and I don't want you to pay a lot of medical money. Why should you be so sullen? Just ask someone else to heal you." He stood up and walked out of the door. The woman didn't dare to stay, so she had to let him go. When Judge D arrived in the town, he saw that it was getting late and it was too late to enter the city. "I might as well stay here for the night, to understand the case clearly, so that I can return to work tomorrow." After thinking about it, I saw a big inn in front of me and walked in. A waiter had already come and asked, "You, Mr. Langjong, would like to stay in a thatched cottage for one night, or rent an inn to stay?" When Judge D saw him, he was lost in thought when he suddenly saw a person coming from the opposite side. Seeing Judge here, he hurriedly stood down and wanted to greet him. He saw 2 or 3 idle people beside him, but he didn't dare to go forward and ask. Judge D had already seen it. Before he could speak, he said, "Uncle Hong, where did you get here? What a chance encounter today. Let's rest in this shop, and we will have company." Seeing him like this, the man stepped forward. "I don't know who this person is, but I'll explain it next time." Chapter 5, Entering the bathroom, talking a lot and revealing the plot, searching for the grave and praying silently to reveal the soul. But it was said that Judge D was at the door of the inn, and when he saw a man coming from the opposite side, he called him to take a rest. That person was none other than Hong Liang. Following Di Gong's mission, he was ordered to visit the murderer of the 6 concubines near the 4 villages of Chongping. Visited for several days. There is absolutely no news. He also arrived in town this afternoon. Seeing that it was already getting late, I planned to come and stay at the hotel. Unexpectedly, Di Gong was here first, so he wanted to come forward to say hello, but he was afraid that others would see through it. Now when he saw Di Gong ordering him to go in, he immediately stepped forward and said, "Unexpectedly, Mr. D also came here. Now I have a room so that the villain can take care of me." Judge D said, "Just go ahead and go into the next room. Come with me." At that time, the 2 of them went in together, and when they got there, Hong Liang closed the door first. He asked Mr. D, "When did you come here?" Mr. D hurriedly stopped and said, "This is the inn where the eyes and ears are important. You just changed the name. But what happened to the case?" Hong Liang shook his head and said, "Little people were ordered to visit carefully for several days. There is no shape or form around here. I'm afraid that Chiao has gone far away. I wonder if Mrs. Chiao and Ma Rong were ever seized." Judge D said, "Although this case has not been solved, I got another suspicious case here today. I need to visit it tonight to find out. Things can only be done tomorrow. I will be selling medicine at that time. What I heard from Grandma Na Bai. Said it again. Hong Liang said, from this point of view, he is suspicious. But he has neither reported it nor has any real traces. What can we do? Judge D said. This county is located here, so I have to visit it. After today's update, you can go to the narrow alley to look at Z at Fan. See if there is any movement. Then I asked her about what was going on when her husband died. Where is the grave now? Ask carefully and report back. Hong Liang took the order at that time. First ask the waiter to get some food and wine, and finish eating in the room, waiting until the update is scheduled. Not far from Gao Ergu, he deliberately shouted loudly. Waiter, you can make a pot of tea and help Mr. go to bed. I'm going to meet a friend and will be here immediately. Then he walked out of the room. When the waiter saw him greeting him like this, he didn't know that he was a county official, so he hurriedly responded. Let him go. Hong Liang arrived at the street, followed the path mentioned by Judge D, and after twists and turns, he came to the narrow alley and saw a small hut. He walked several times in both ends of the alley, but no one came or went. Said. Could it be that it's still too early? I'll go to town for a leisurely stroll and then come back. After thinking about it, he returned to the alley and headed east to the street. Although it is a rural area, because it is an important road between north and south, all the stores are not closed at this time. Seeing a bathhouse in front of me from a distance, he said loudly. Why don't you take a bath now? If you have someone to spare, you can also take a ride and ask questions. When I walked to the ridge, I saw that there were already people sitting in the room in front and behind. Get full. I had to find a place to sit on the pit on the left and ask the waiter. How far is it from Gaya Changping? How many bathhouses are there in this town? When the waiter saw that he spoke with a foreign accent, he said. This place is only 60 kilometers away from the city. Are the guests going into town? Hong Liang said, I have a relative living here, so I want to go to visit my relatives. Your place must be under the jurisdiction of Chongping. Now the county magistrate. Whose surname is it? Where is Mr. H? What news is there recently? The waiter said, our county magistrate is really unique in the world. Since he took office. I don't know how many difficult cases he has solved. His surname is D and his given name is Renjia. He is from Taiyuan, Bingzhou. Your guest is late. If you had come a few days earlier, there is a Luwan who is 10 miles away from here. There is a murder case in the market town. It is very strange, This guest only got up from the inn at midnight. At dawn, he was killed at the entrance of the town. I don't know how the corpse was mistaken again, and the young man turned into a bearded one. Are you curious about Dodge? Now Mr. D has passed the examination and presented the seal, recruiting people to claim them. I don't know who the murderer is. He has been away on several business trips and has not yet been apprehended. Hong Liang said, that's it. I am a few days late, otherwise I would have seen the excitement. Said, finishing taking off his clothes. He washed in the pool for a while, then came out and said to the man, I was here yesterday and heard that dragon boats are very good here. When we get to the Dragon Boat Festival, we can see why there was a plague last year, and why people will die after watching dragon boats. The waiter laughed and said, You, the guest, are making fun of me. I grew up here. I have never heard of this strange saying. You are a passing guest. Where did you come from? Hong Liang said, when I first heard it, I was also confused. Later, the person did have evidence, saying that the Bai family in the narrow alley ahead. He died after watching the dragon boat. You are from Sopeng, has this happened? Before the waiter could say anything, a teenage boy next to him said, This is true. He didn't die from watching the dragon boat. I heard he died from abdominal pain at night. There was another person in front of the two of them, and he said to the waiter, Yuan Wu, this thing is the most strange thing. Bai Shun was such a strong man, but he still went home as usual. He would die if he screamed at night, and his eyes were still open when he was about to die. It's really scary. I heard that he still often causes mischief on his grave. Isn't this a suspicious case? Have you seen him down there? Yuan Wudao, don't be fooled by this. Young people observe the festival and don't even go out of the house often. If there is some special reason, how can they be so persistent? As for the trouble on the tomb, Gao Jiawa. There are only tombs, so how could it be seen that it was him? The man said, I'm just chatting here. It can be seen that life in this world is like floating clouds passing by. If you don't take a breath, you will die. After Bai Shun died. Isn't it a pity that his daughter has become mute again? As he said that, he put on his clothes and looked outside. After hearing this, Hong Liang knew that this man knew the details, and asked Yuan Wu again, "What is this man's surname?" "He is a very outspoken friend. Yuan Wudao. He is a shopkeeper in the town. The Bishun yarn shop used to be next to his house. His surname is Wang. We have seen him growing up, so we all call him Xiao Wang. He is also a person who is young and careless, and only cares about talking nonsense without knowing the benefits." Hong Liang also laughed aloud at that time. "After giving the bath money and coming out, I was already in a good mood. I thought, although there is some eyebrows in this matter, there is no proof at all. What can be done? After thinking about it all the way, I arrived at the narrow alley and walked in twice more, but still no movement." He had no choice but to go back to his apartment and tell Duke D what he had just said. Judge D said, "That's the case. Tomorrow I will go to Gaojiawa to have a look, and then make an investigation." One night passed, and early the next morning, Judge D got up and asked the waiter to bring snacks. After the two had finished eating, he said to the waiter, "I will come to live here today. I went out to look for some business at this time, and I will definitely be back before noon. Now that I have this silver here, I can just accept it and settle the matter tomorrow." At that time, behind him, he took out a piece of broken silver, handed it to the waiter, took the medicine bag, and went out. Arrive at the entrance of the town, seeing an old man there, Hong Liang stepped forward and asked, "Excuse me, old man, which way goes from here to Gaojiawa? How far is it from here?" The old man pointed his finger and said, "From here, go east to the three-way intersection and turn, then go south about B Road and you'll be there." Hong Liang said thank you. The two of them followed his instructions and went all the way. As expected, they saw a three-way intersection ahead, not far to the south. "I saw smoke and grass, mounds of bones, and many graveyards lined up in front." Hong Liang said, "Master, here you are. Just look at these endless tombs. Do you know which tomb belongs to the Bai family?" Di Gong said, "I am here from this county. Specifically for him to clear up his grievances. Although there is a distinction between yin and yang, wouldn't my sincerity have any effect? If Bishun died of illness, his grave would naturally not be found. If one dies due to suffering, the deceased has knowledge and will manifest his or her spirit." As he said this, he prayed silently in all directions around the tomb. It was already midday, and suddenly the sun dimmed. A strong wind arose in the area, blowing up the sand and dust, which was 10 feet high, a black mass condensed in it. He rushed towards Duke D. When Hong Liang saw this scene, his face turned pale with fright, the hairs all over his body stood up, and he stood tightly behind Judge D. When Di Gong saw the black dumplings flying up, he said again, "Although Mr. D knows your injustice. But there are so many deserted graves like clouds. How could I know where your corpse is and why not lead the way?" After saying that, I saw the howling wind, flying further and further away. After passing a few small roads, I saw a lonely grave piled in front of me in the distance, and the wind blew there. Suddenly disappeared. Di Gong and Hong Liang also arrived at the tomb and looked around carefully. Although it did not look like a newly buried tomb, it did not look like an old tomb that had been buried for many years. Judge said, "Since it is like this, you should go and find a local villager. Ask if this tomb is where the Bai family is buried. I'll wait for you here." Hong Liangxin, at this moment, had no choice but to go ahead. About mealtime, an old man with white hair came to me. He said to Mr. D, "You, Mr. Doctor, are too out of date. No one in the town buys medicine. Why do you come to this hell gate to do business?" The old man was working in the field, and he was pestered by you for a while. Say you have something to ask me. Tell me, what's the matter? I don't know what Judge D said. Let's look at the explanation in the next chapter. The 6th chapter of The Old Earthworker made a speech without any evidence. Yin Ling asked the case to the court. But it was said that Duke D saw the old man coming and said, "You are so rude. Even though I am a friend of Jianghu and have no reputation, I am not so stupid as to come here to sell medicine. There is only one reason why I came to ask you. I think this cemetery has good luck. Within 10 years, the descendants will surely prosper. So I ask you, do you know who the owner of this land is, and whether he is willing to sell this land or not?" After hearing this, the old man sneered, turned around and left. Hong Liang caught up and grabbed him and said angrily, "Because you are old and unwilling to fight with others. If 10 years ago, I would have beaten you up and asked you whether you would ignore me or not. You are not mute. My husband asked you this, why didn't you get a reply?" The man was grabbed by him and could not escape. He had no choice but to say to Hong Liang, "It's not because I didn't talk to him about it." He also said something interesting. He said that the number of descendants in this cemetery is high, and now the descendants of this family are extinct. since they were buried here. Our earthworkers have never seen anyone from his family visiting the grave. Even his daughter has become mute. What good is the feng shui of this grave? Isn't it just nonsense? Hong Liang said deliberately, don't you admit your mistake? Although I am not from this place, I often visit this place. The family that became mute is named Bai, and the family that buries the grave is named Bai. Na Yuan, is the surname Bai? The old man smiled and said. Fortunately you said you knew. If his surname is not Bai, why don't you change his surname on his behalf? The old man has something to do in the field and has no time to chat with you. If you don't believe me, go to Luan and ask and you will know. As he said that, he moved Hong Liang's hand and hurried away. Judge Di waited for him to go far away. He said. This must be an unjust killing, otherwise why would it be such a strange experience? I'll talk about it with you back to the city. At that time, Hong Liang led the way and walked straight to the main road through several small roads. It's afternoon time. Feeling hungry, they chose a restaurant and had a hearty meal. We walked forward again, and at about the time when the lanterns were lit, we arrived at Chongping City. The master and servant arrived at the yamen and sat down in the study. At this time, all official business was done. Seeing that I had not been to the court for the past 2 days, I was already confused and said, is it because the murder case has not been solved, so I can't support you here? Otherwise, I must have paid a private visit again. You talked to each other, and we were discussing in private. Judge Di has arrived at the office. First ask Mrs. Chiao and Ma Rong if they have come back. Some family members have returned early, the 2 of them came back the night before. Since the uncle was not at the office, they went to work again the next morning. But the Chiao surname has not come out yet. I wonder what happened. Judge Di nodded, and then ordered the duty officer to come in and ask questions. At that time, Hong Liang greeted him out. After about half a cup of tea, the messenger came in and asked Mr. Di to stand down. Judge Di said. There is a red sign in this county. At dawn tomorrow morning, we will quickly go to 2 places in Gaojiawa, Huanghua Town, and deliver the construction site armor together for questioning in the morning. The messenger received the Zhu, arrived at the classroom, and said to everyone, we have been quiet for 2 days, and we didn't hear any news. At this time, this unreasonable thing happened again. I don't know what my grandpa heard, but he suddenly ordered me to go to Huanghua Town. Do you know who is there? The crowd said, He Kai is still in the city today, why did you forget about him? Last year, it was the mouse season. You also invite us people to have a drink in his town. How can you be so forgetful? If you go early tomorrow morning, you will definitely meet him. This gentleman is too late, the Qing dynasty is extremely Qing dynasty, even though there is such a good official in the local area. It only caused us a lot of fatigue, I sit here all day long and can't find a single article. The messenger heard that he was Hikai. He returned home that day, rested for the night, and got up hurriedly at 5 o'clock the next day. When we arrived at Huanghua Town, we first went to Hikai's house and left the official business behind it, asked his assistant to go to Gaojiawa to deliver the earthwork, and he will be in the town. After lunch, the man had brought the earthworkers, and the 3 of them arrived in the county together. After the messengers had arrived, Di Gong immediately sat in the court and took Hikai first and asked, Are you the first person from Huanghua Town? In what year did Shang Mao arrive at Fang? What cases have been reported in the territory? Why did you miss it? You're lazy, why don't you report it? When Hikai saw Di Gong speaking, he said these few words. Knowing what incident he had uncovered, he hurriedly replied, I went to the workshop on the 1st day of April last year. I always go to the workshop on the 1st day of April. Work carefully and don't dare to make mistakes. Since the Grand Master took office, the officials have been clean and the people are safe, and there are really no cases to be reported in the town. How dare you be lazy when you are thinking too much? Please ask for your grace. Judge Di said, since it's April, why was there a murder case in May last year? Don't know anything? After Hikai heard this, it was like a basin of cold water being poured on him, his heart was beating wildly, and he said hurriedly, the villain is in the shop, patrolling day and night, but there is no such case. If there is such a case, the master is close by. So close. How dare you hide the case and not report it? Judge Di said, this county will not prosecute him at this time, but how did Bai Shun die in that town? Since you are a local leader, you are not unaware of this, so hurry up and call him. Hikai saw him and asked this question. Knowing that there must be a reason, he replied at that time. Although I am an errand in the town, there are things that should be asked about, and there are also things that should not be asked about. There are thousands of families in the town, and there is not a day without weddings and funerals. Bai Shun died. It is also a common thing. His family did not report the crime, and no charges were brought against him. The villain knows that he died after the Dragon Boat Festival last year. As for where he died, the villain really didn't know and didn't dare to talk nonsense. Duke D shouted. You are a bitch, but you can explain clearly. The county now knows that you are still prevaricating like this, and it is obvious that you usually miss the mark. Said Dot. He also ordered the earthworkers to be brought up. The old man heard the county magistrate tell him. He was frightened to death, and he knelt down in front of the case tremblingly and said, I'm a geotechnical engineer from Gaojiawa. Please greet me when I see you. Seeing the old man in this state, Judge D recalled the time when he ran away yesterday. I was really laughing in my heart. At that time he asked. What's your name? How many years have you been working as a geotechnical engineer? The man said, the old man's surname is Tao, his name is Tao Dashi. Before he could finish his words, people on both sides shouted, You old doghead, you are so brave. If you dare to call me old man in front of the emperor, I will give you 200 punishments. It depends on whether you are old or not. When the earthworker saw the messenger yelling, his face turned pale with fright. He quickly changed his words and said, You deserve to die. You have been working as an earthworker for 30 years. What do you want me to do today? Mr. D said, Look up. Is this place close to hell? Take a look, do you recognize this county? When Tao Dashi heard this, his tongue was frightened and he said in his heart, I said this to the doctor yesterday. Is it illegal? This master is no better than others. Seeing that Dazoon's buttocks were about to show off, I was anxious for a long time. Just now he spoke, Master, I dare not raise my head. I was reckless yesterday and had an occasional joke with the medicine seller. Please forgive me once. Judge D said, Since you know the crime, you are exempt from prosecution. Just take a look and see how this county compares to that person. The old man looked up and saw that he was out of his mind. He hurriedly kowtowed below and said, You villain deserves to die. I don't know if it's the master. I won't dare to do this next time no matter who I am. When the officers saw this, they knew that Duke D had gone out to investigate the case again. I saw it said, Since you know that the grave is buried in the Bai family. When he came to be buried, what was his appearance like, who brought him, and why did you know that his daughter had become mute? It can come from actual offerings. The old man said, This little man is doing this earthwork. If anyone comes to bury the grave, I will give him 200 green coins. He helped him pack graves and pile soil on his behalf. 3 days after the Dragon Boat Festival last year, I suddenly saw a coffin coming. 2 women were crying and said they were minor officials of the Bai family in the town. One of the 2 people he sent was his wife. That one is his biological mother. The villain originally wanted to be buried in a chaotic house, but before he came to the coffin suddenly made 2 loud noises, and the villain was frightened. He said to his mother at that time, Your son refused to accept death and is still making noise. Could it be that you were buried too early? What exactly caused his death? Before his mother could speak, his wife cried and scolded the villain. They say I control public land and are not allowed to be buried. When the old woman saw what she said, she started to quarrel with the villain. At that time, because she was a promiscuous woman, it's inconvenient to argue with them. It is also feared that the body and death of the deceased are unknown. When the case is solved later, they will come to investigate. If they rely on the random graves, won't they bring harm to others? So the villain buried him in another place. Who would have thought that after he was buried, ghosts would scream every night late at night? No peace at all costs. Yesterday, my grandpa was standing there. It was because I was brave, but I didn't dare to do anything there. See, this was something I saw and heard. I don't know whether the deceased was dead or not. I really didn't know about it. Please, Grandpa's grace. After hearing this, Duke D said, In that case, I will let you go back. You can rest there tomorrow. After saying that, Tao Dashi withdrew. Immediately, a message was sent to the court. Hong Liang, together with the rapid dispatchers, arrived at Huanghua town that night. Bai Shun's wife will be brought to trial tomorrow morning. Having finished his instructions, he retreated into the back hall. Those quickies shook their heads and cluttered their heads one by one, saying, We have to come and go at least 5 or 6 times a month in this town. I've never heard of this before. Why is my master so smart? The murder case of Lu Yu has not yet been apprehended. If you find out about this case again, wouldn't you be asking for trouble? You see, this happened out of nowhere. Who do we ask for money from? At that time, we talked to each other for a while, and then we had to go together with Hong Liang. I don't know what happened next, but I'll break it down next time. In the 7th chapter, the old woman begged for mercy and the county magistrate first asked for a confession. but said that Hong Liang had received the imperial edict. Tong Kuaishou rushed to Huanghua town on the same day and arrived at Bai Shun's house the next day. He knocked on the door twice and heard the reply from the accompanist, who is knocking on the door. "It's so noisy early in the morning. Where are you from?" he said as he arrived at the door. After opening the door, he saw 3 or 4 big men crowding in the alley. He quickly crossed the 2 door leaves with his hands and asked, "You should also know that there are no male guests in my family, and it is extremely difficult to be a widow for 2 generations. What are you guys doing? Are you knocking on doors this morning?" Hong Liang was about to speak, when the messenger said first, "We are also sent by orders. We have no control over it, otherwise we would be sleeping at home. Who will pay off the debt of the long journey without any reason? Just because our county magistrate, There is an edict here, asking us, Hongdu leaders, to come together, asking you and your wife to go to the city immediately and answer the question in the afternoon. Don't block me at the door like this. This is not the place to talk." As he said that, he pushed Bai Shun's mother, and everyone rushed in. Went to the main room and sat down. Seeing that the door to the first room had not yet been opened, Hong Liang took out the edict and said, "Official business is here, it's too late. Where is your wife now? Please come out and go together to see the grandpa." I said 3 words and 5 sentences, "It's none of our business." When Bai Shun's mother saw that she was here on official business, she was so frightened that she trembled all over and said, "My family has never been a bandit, so if we are asked to come to court, could there be a debtor suing my family, saying that we will not pay back the money we owe? It's a pity that after my son's death, our family has been in a difficult situation, and we can't return the favor. Although I come from a small family, I have never seen an official come to the house to show his ugliness. What should I do about this matter? I beg you to show mercy and do some good deeds. Come to the Grand Master on my behalf and reply first. This is my object. Clean it up quickly. Let's give him some time today to prevent us from going to the church." As he said this, tears started to flow from his eyes. Hong Liang saw that she was really a loyal and useless woman, and said, "Don't worry, no debtor will sue you. Just because the uncle wants to take your daughter-in-law to ask questions, you should hand her over, or do some favors and not take you there." Before Hong Liang finished speaking, Bai Shun's mother had already started shouting and cried, "I think you are really county officials. It turns out that the fox is pretending to be the tiger. Come to scare our people. Since he is an official and has no one to accuse him, why should he mention only my wife? It shows that you are not good people. Seeing that my wife is a widow, we are both powerless. So I came up with this bad idea and deceived her. It was not rape. Is it just a dream to be sold into prostitution? Since you are like this, Grandma will fight for your life and then drag you into the city. Look, your county magistrate didn't even ask." As he said this, he cried and ran up to grab Hong Liang. The 2 police officers next to them couldn't bear it. He pushed Bai Shun's mother to sit down and shouted, "You are such an ignorant wife. This is Hong Dudu's special wish to prevent you from being exposed, so I said that I would take your wife with you. You misunderstood our opinions and mistakenly thought that we were fake and that everything in the world was fake. The edict was written by the Grand Master himself. Is it also fake? I think you are too confused. No wonder you are trying to fool your wife. If you hadn't met this Mr. Qing Tian, I might have died without knowing it. Everyone is here to know X. As soon as the door in the next room rang, her daughter-in-law had already stood up and shouted outside, "Mother-in-law, please stand up and let me ask her something. Firstly, it's not you, and secondly, there is someone controlling us. Our mother-in-law and daughter-in-law are here, at home. He didn't commit any crime, as the old saying goes, although a steel sword is fast, it cannot kill an innocent person. Even though he is a local official, he still has to be reasonable. The wife of the emperor's wife, who was married to the emperor's wife, also wrote a poem and a banquet list for the official spring and autumn festival. There has never been a reason for 2 generations to live together and for local officials to go on business trips. It's not difficult for him to accuse me. As long as he explains the situation and what kind of crime the 2 of us have committed, I won't be afraid to go to court and argue clearly. If you mention someone like this, neither my mother-in-law nor my daughter-in-law can comply with the mention. Even if I go, no one can ask me to come back, but don't say that I have offended the officials. All the servants, please listen to her words. Her words are as sharp as a knife, and her teeth are too sharp to speak." At this time, everyone was blocked by her and stared at Hong Liang. Hong Liang smiled and said, "You are a little woman. Although you are young, you are very clever with your tongue. No wonder you did that shocking incident. What do you want to ask about the case? We are not Chongping County, but we know how to appoint people by vote. You want to ask, go to the hall and ask, who are you trying to scare by these words? At that time, with a look of disgrace, everyone understood, and rushed forward, grabbing her, not allowing her to argue, pushing and shoving her. Go out and go. Bai Shun's mother saw that her daughter-in-law had been kidnapped. Although she wanted to come, she was alone. How could she withstand the obstruction of this group of wolves and tigers, so she could only cry and scream. It rolled around on the ground for a while. No one had time to ask. When they arrived in the town, all the shopkeepers saw what happened to the Bai family. They didn't know why, so they all came to watch. Hong Liang was afraid of the noise from idlers, so he said loudly, "We were sent by Mr. D from Chongping County. We immediately went to the court to interrogate you, your neighbors, block the way here now, and then look for your neighbors, but don't avoid them. This case is no ordinary case." Those people were afraid that they would be involved, so they passed by one after another. Hong Liang took advantage of this and came all the way. Arrive at the office around noon. He immediately went in and reported to Duke D. Judge D ordered him to wait in the hall. I wore the official belt myself. The door of Nguyen Pavilion opens and a public case is raised. When I saw the scribes from all the classes lined up on both sides early in the morning, I immediately ordered them to lead the prisoners. There was a shout of intimidation from both sides, and Bai Shun's wife had already knelt down at the foot of the steps. Before Judge D opened his mouth, she had already asked, "Mrs. Zhou, the young lady, kowtowed to see her grandpa. I don't know what my grandpa's advice is, so I specially ordered the official to go to the town to interrogate, and I beg my grandpa to get a clear answer as soon as possible. I am a young widow and cannot kneel in court for long." Duke D heard this. I can't help but be angry. He sneered and said, "You are such a widow. You can only deceive that old woman into confusion. How can this county fool you? Just raise your head and see who this county is." After hearing this, Mrs. Zhou immediately went up. Looking at it, this is quite a surprise. I thought to myself, this is obviously the doctor who sold medicine the day before yesterday. How did he become the magistrate of Chongping County? No wonder I have been flustered for days. It turns out that this happened. What should I do if I find out for him? Although I was very scared in my heart, I didn't dare to express it externally. Instead, she replied loudly, "The little woman didn't know it was the master who came the day before yesterday, so she made an offensive statement. Although it was the little woman's fault, she didn't know that she was not guilty." Your Majesty is an upright official, why should you express your anger over this matter? Judge D shouted, "You whore, you don't know this county. Your husband is just a young man. Husband and wife should be of the same mind and have been together for hundreds of years. Why do you commit adultery with bad intentions? Instead, he killed his own husband. If you call me from the facts, this county may be extraordinarily benevolent and reduce the punishment. If you go out of your way to deny it, you will suffer immediately in this 3-foot Dharma hall. Do you know why this county renovated yesterday? Just because your husband's death is unknown and his spirit has not dissipated, he made a complaint to this office a few days ago, so he came to visit. Who would have thought that you were lawless and slandered Aunt Wang? The word disobedience is already an unpunishable crime. You come from actual offerings. How did you kill your husband that day, and who was the adulterer?" Ms. Zhou heard that she had murdered her husband. It was such a blow to the head that it hit her heart. Her true soul had already flown out of her body. He hurriedly replied, "The great master is the parents of the people." The little woman had no intention of offending the day before. How could she come up with such a crime for such a trivial matter? This is a matter of life and death. Your Majesty must be merciful and cannot be arbitrarily wronged. Duke D shouted, "This county knows you are a whore. It's a sharp tongue, and I won't return the evidence to you. I'm sorry you don't want to hire me either. Your husband's death certificate states your crime. He said that after his death, you were afraid that his daughter would grow up and expose his secrets to ruin your career. Therefore, he conspired with the adulterer and used medicine to make his daughter mute. Yesterday, the Japanese county saw it with their own eyes. What else do you have to rely on? If you don't confess the truth, the county will torture you." At this time, the Zhou family just complained about the injustice and said, "Where did the little woman start? This turmoil has arisen invisible and invisible. What can you ask for under 3 feet? Even if it is torture? Even if you're tortured to death, you can't just admit it." After hearing this, Judge D said angrily, "You whore, you dare to confront me in public. This county is willing to fight for this black veil. If you admit that cruel crime, let's see how proud you are to deny it. Let's drag her away first." 40 on the back of the whip. A greeting. In the morning, many officers came, dragged down Donchi, tore off Zhou's clothes, yelled 5 and 6, and beat them straight down the back. I don't know whether Zhou is willing to do it or not. Let's see the breakdown in the next chapter. Chapter 8. The old woman is eloquent and eloquent. She is an idiot and pitiful. But it was said that Mr. Zhou had been whipped 40 times on the back, and Nezhen was willing to confess. At that time, he continued to cry out for injustice and said to the hall, "My grandpa is the father and mother of a county. If you want to kill people without any evidence, what kind of government can you do? Today, the little woman is willing to be beaten to death here. If you want to confess by torture, you have to talk in your sleep in the middle of the night. Although the steel sword is fast, it cannot kill the innocent person. You said that my husband's death was unknown and a criminal complaint was filed against him. Who is this witness and where is his complaint? But you know there is a world outside the sky, and now you are here to frame me for your own personal enmity. The superior's official position has never been closed. Even if officials protect each other. If you are still not allowed to sue, the underworld will sue you even after you have suffered your punishment and humiliation in the underworld. There is also the crime of falsely accusing a good man of being a thief, not to mention that I am a young widow, and I have risked my life. Don't even think about wearing this black gauze securely." At that time, I cried and scolded in the hall and refused to let him go. Seeing that she was so sharp-tongued, Judge D then asked someone to wait on her with a stick. With a threat from both sides and a pop-dong sound, the instrument of torture had already been thrown down. When Zhou saw it, he still refused to change his stance and continued to complain. Judge said, "This county also knows that you are both promiscuous and violent. I forgive you that the skin all over your body is not made of cast iron. If you don't use it for a day, this county will not let go of the torture instruments." After that, he ordered the people on both sides to do it. Those officers at this time. Seeing Zhou's defense, both of them understood that refuses to come forward. There was a quickie inside. When he saw Hong Liang was also in the seeing Zhou's defense, both of them understood that refuses to come forward. There was a quickie inside. When he saw Hong Liang was also in the hall, he glanced at him. The two of them walked behind Nguyen Pavilion and asked him, "Do too. What kind of flaws did Mr. and I find during the interview yesterday?" At this time, they were being tortured again in the hall. Suppose she is pinched to death, Grandpa's reputation, our lives. How can we say that we are complaining? Isn't this something made out of nothing? You are usually very upright, why are you so confused today? Even if she plans to murder her husband, she must have the right circumstances and open the coffin for examination before she can be tortured. Dudu can go up at this time. Should I reply first, or should I retreat first and ask tomorrow? Or just use arbitrary punishment? You see, this woman's sharp tongue is not meant to threaten her. If I behave like this, my fame will be hindered. After hearing this, Hong Liang went to visit with Judge D. Because this incident happened a year ago, even if no one reported it, the mute man could not be used as evidence, so he couldn't make up his mind, so he had to walk to Duke D and whisper a few words in reply. Duke D said angrily. This case was investigated by the county itself, waiting for someone to report it that the deceased's injustice can't be avenged. What kind of county magistrate is this county doing? Since you dare not use torture, this county will open the coffin tomorrow for inspection. If there were no scars at that time, I would have been willing to sit back. This case could not be ignored in the end. And said to Mrs. Zhou, "You whore, you are still so arrogant," this county said, "you should be smart and find out the cure temporarily." I'm sorry you can't deny it. At that time, I first ordered the police to imprison the Zhou family, and at the same time issued a signature to bring Bai Shun's mother to the case, and then ordered the daily police to go to Gaojiawa to arrange the corpse place. Preparing to open the coffin tomorrow. As soon as the difference in votes comes out. All the officers in Chongping were frightened on behalf of Mr. D, saying that this matter was nothing more than a child's play. Even though there was suspicion, there was no way to do it. All the officers in Chongping were frightened on behalf of Mr. D, saying that this matter was nothing more than a child's play. Even though there was suspicion, there was no way to do it. If it couldn't be tested, wouldn't it be a waste of life? Not to mention that everyone was discussing privately, but that the businessman arrived at Huanghua town and arrived at the door of Bishun's house. It was already time to turn on the lights, but he saw many idle people making trouble. He stopped at the entrance of the alley and said, "It turned out that Mr. D was in this town the day before yesterday. I said that although he was an upright official, his ears were not clear. Now that he saw the flaw, he naturally investigated it thoroughly. That old fool is still crying on the ground. Isn't this Skynet's great work, careless but not missing? But Mr. D can't do it because of this suspicious case, dash." The confession was copied. It seems that there will always be a big breakout season later. The other party was there, and the messenger had arrived at the entrance of the alley. Singing loudly, "Everyone, please separate. We are tens of thousands of people, come, for this official matter, There is no point in gathering here at this time. If you want to watch the excitement, go to Gaojiwa tomorrow, he said and separated from everyone. When I got there, I saw the old woman saying, "This is not a disaster from the sky. I took him seriously yesterday, so what's the point of causing such trouble? I won't die tomorrow. I went to the office to fight with him for this. It's an old life." The messenger walked up and shouted, "You old man, you are so ignorant. It is for the best of me to redress your son's injustice, but you say so. Since you are going to fight for your life, what a coincidence. My grandpa is now in the hall waiting for a reply, and I will talk to you about this. Go. Lest your wife be in prison alone," he said and dragged her away to enter the city. When Bai Shun's mother saw that someone else was coming, she was sad at the time, so she grabbed his collar and started crying. Said, "I don't want the product parts anymore. After all, you are a bitch who will make trouble and prepare to accuse him with your life. If I don't go with you, I will be sorry for my wife." At that time, we walked out of the gate and walked together. That policeman, seeing what happened to him, he hurriedly said to Hikai, "Although we are troubled by her. We have traveled so many routes, but we can't bear to see her like this. It's not easy to get to this small door. What kind of thing can be bought without money? You can send 2 guys to take care of her overnight, which is also a good thing for you and me." Hikai agreed at that time and met the 2 of them. Take advantage of the moonlight and go overnight. After the 3rd watch, we have arrived at the city gate. Fortunately, the guards guarding the gate were all acquaintances. When they heard that the county gate was clean, they quickly opened the door and let the 2 people in. At this time, Duke D had already rested. The messenger first brought Bai Shun's mother into the prison cell, where she stayed overnight and stayed there early the next morning. When Di Gong got up, the votes had been reported, and he immediately went up to the hall and took the people with him. Duke D asked, "Although your surname is Bai, what is the surname of your mother's family? This county came to your town the day before yesterday. Do you know what happened to your son? Just because his death is unknown and he was killed by your wife, because this county is an upright official here and specializes in redressing grievances on behalf of others, so your son filed a complaint and begged me to redress his grievances. I brought you here today for no other reason. It's a pity that your daughter-in-law refused to admit it, and instead said that the county deliberately framed her. Without opening the coffin and examining it, we would never be able to tell the difference. The deceased is your son, so you are brought to the case." Bishuan's mother heard this. Negui Shibo replied at that time, "My son has been dead for a year, why do I need to look through the bones? I saw him at home on the night of his death, and when he was about to be buried, he was seen by everyone. The grandpa said he would seek justice on behalf of my son. My son has no grievance to avenge, why did he torture my wife indiscriminately? There is no basis for this. Since you are a parent official, you should understand why you are harming people in this way. My maiden name is Tang, and I have been here for several generations. Who doesn't know they are good people? If you ask him, is he going to drag others down again? Today I am here to explain to you, if my wife is not released, I don't want to go back. Fight for my life. Even if I die here, I can't listen to your nonsense, harming the living and looking for me, the dead." As he said this, he kept crying in the hall. Mr. D saw that she was really a useless and honest person. Just speak for your wife. Heartbroken, he said, "You woman, you are so confused. No wonder you believed so deeply after your son's death. You still can't understand even this county's judgment. You know this county is doing this for your own sake. If the coffin is opened and no scars can be found, this county also needs to sit back. Just because the ghost of the deceased was dissatisfied and came to file a complaint, and you refuse to open an examination now, will the injustice not be redressed? Since this county is a local government, we cannot be ignorant of it. I am going to destroy this wuxia and get to the bottom of it. The test is ready," he said and ordered her to be taken down, and she was ordered to go there at dawn tomorrow morning and appear at the end of the day. Immediately left the hall and went down to the study room to prepare detailed equipment. The application details are submitted to the Constitution. All the officers and men outside were suspicious and said that Duke D was reckless. We had no choice but to dare to go up and stop him, so we had to prepare things for the test and spent the night. The sky will be bright the next day. The officers had already arrived one after another. They were given 3 bangs first and went to the lobby to wait on them. At the time of Chen, Duke D was promoted to the court. Swazwa, who first passed on the original report and accepted it, said, "This matter is different from ordinary cases. If it doesn't hurt. It's a small thing for this county to ruin its reputation, but you and everyone else can't do nothing either. Today it is important to identify the injuries so that the case can be conclusively convicted and justice can be redressed for the deceased. The missions have finished receiving their orders. Then they brought the Tang family and Zhou family to the hall. Di Gong said to Zhou again, "You whore, you were willing to be punished yesterday, but you just refused to admit it. I don't know that you have deceived others. This county will not allow you to be fooled. Today, I will take your mother-in-law and daughter-in-law to have a test to see if you have any more problems. How to argue. Dash." Seeing that Duke Di was so interested, Mrs. Zhou secretly said in her heart, "I didn't expect him to be so serious, but I may not be able to test it out here, so I might as well bite him to let him know my interests." At that time, she replied, "Little woman, injustice is as deep as the ocean. What does the grandfather have to do with the deceased if he takes revenge and makes false accusations? A year after my husband died, his coffin was suddenly opened and turned upside down. What do you think? If there is any injury, the woman should confess her guilt. If there is no injury, the prince is a seal official. Whatever the regulations are, you must acknowledge them yourself, and you cannot make fun of the national laws. Blindly slandering ordinary people." Judge Di sneered. He didn't know what to say. Let's see what happens next. Chapter 9. The magistrate of Di County opened the coffin and inspected the pottery tools. But he said that Di Gong saw Zhou and asked him whether it would hurt him to open the coffin, so he falsely accused a good citizen. As for what the regulations were, Judge Di sneered and said, "This county doesn't have the courage. I don't dare to pursue this case. Yesterday, I explained to your mother-in-law that if the deceased has no injuries, the county will first dismiss him and punish him. If you want to use words to intimidate at this time, just settle the case. Others may be fooled by you. Don't let such delusions arise in front of this county." The order was sent to take the Tang family and Zhou family to the corpse field first. As soon as she said hello, the officers couldn't help but drag her down, push and hug her, and get on the sedan chair. "Go straight to Gaojiawa." Di Gong immediately took his fellow prisoners and others and left in a sedan chair. The common people along the way, listening to the coffin being opened and inspected, all said things that were easily forgotten, and all of them brought the old and the young to help. We went to visit together in the sedan chair. Around early noon, we arrived at Huanghua town. He Kaidai, a geotechnical engineer, had already come to greet him and said, "The corpse field has been set up. Please give me your instructions." Di Gong asked him and the two of them to step back. He said to Hong Liang, "You were in the bathhouse the day before yesterday and heard from Yuan Wu that the young man who took a bath opened a shop nearby's house. You'd better pay a visit now. What's his name? Report back to Gaojiawa. I don't think I have time to return to the city today. After the inspection, I will temporarily use the hotel in the day before yesterday as a residence." Having finished his instructions, he got up his sedan chair and started walking again, without a moment. Already in front, I saw only the left side of the tomb. A tent with reed mats was built, and the public case was tucked in. All the people attending the mission were on the right side. Under the reed tent, the tools for digging earth have been placed in front of the tomb. Judge Di got off the sedan chair and went to the tomb first to look at it carefully. Then he entered the public seat. Tao Dashi and Zhou were brought together and asked, "The former Japanese county is here. You said that this tomb was buried by the Bai family. Is this true? This matter is extraordinary. If the coffin is opened and examined, it is not by Shun. This is not a small crime. It will be too late to regret then." Tao Dashi said happily, "How dare you lie? Now that his mother and wife are all here, there is no reason to make mistakes." Di Gong said, "It is not because of the arrest of this county, but the Dongzhou clan is doing all kinds of evil." She and the county also asked about the punishment for falsely accusing good people. If it weren't for Bai Shun's grave, not only did it hinder the test, but the county was also charged with it. You have been punished. If it were not Bai Shun, you would be punished as usual. Then he said to Mr. Zhou, "Can you hear me? This county has always handled cases for the people and never protected its own opinions. It can be seen that this opening of the coffin, the corpse is distressed in every way. You are his married couple, regardless of murder. At this time, it is also time to offer sacrifices to show your affection during your lifetime." Then he ordered Tao Dashi to lead her there. Bai Shun's mother saw Judge Di saying this to her daughter-in-law. "Seeing my son's body turned upside down, I felt sad." Unable to help but burst into tears, she grabbed Mrs. Zhou and said, "My son, my Bai family is so ruined. The death of my son is already a misfortune for the family. After his death, he will suffer from this disaster. Meeting this dog official. How can I not be sad?" I saw Mrs. Zhou saying loudly, "I don't think you need to cry anymore. I can't tolerate my silence at home. I brought someone back innocently to find out what happened. It's useless to cry now. Since we have to open the coffin for inspection, we can wait. He couldn't find any injuries. At that time, I was not afraid whether he was an official or a government official. The emperor legislated and asked him to govern the people, but he was not asked to harm anyone, and he was not exempted from the charge of rebellion. If you ask me to worship, I will just do it. At that time, she pushed her mother-in-law over and walked in front of the grave. After praying twice, not only did he not look sad, but he showed his lewd attitude and cursed at Tao Dashi. You old doghead, talk too much. If you try to please him now, you won't be able to leave after the test begins. Just do it, Grandma has paid her respects. Tao Dashi was scolded by her. She was really innocent and aggrieved because she was a poor woman and was on top of the corpse field. Not daring to argue with her, he had to turn around and go back to Digong. When Judge Di saw Zhou's behavior, he thought to himself, although I want to avenge Bai Shun. But after all, I can't quite believe it, because she is the wife of the deceased. At this time, the coffin is opened and the bones are turned over. He should have been extremely sad, so he ordered her to go to worship him, and when he saw her admonishing him to be calm, he didn't realize that she was not sad at all, but showed such a ferocious image, so there was no doubt that it must be murder. Immediately ordered earthworks to excavate. Tao Dashi accepted the order with a joyful voice. He and many other men had started digging with shovels, and in less than half an hour, the coffin was revealed. Everyone stepped forward, brushed away the floating soil, reported back to Duke Di, and carried it to the examination site. At this time, Mrs. Tang saw that the coffin had been dug out. She cried so hard that she fainted on the ground. Duke Di had no choice but to be helped over, got up and came to the court, where he first ordered He Kai and the guards to open the coffin lid. Everyone stepped forward as ordered. Then he took off the lid. They couldn't help but take a few steps back together, and each of them stuck out their tongues and shook their lips, saying, "This is really strange. Even if the body is unknown, it will never be more than a year, and the two eyes are still open like this. Look at this image, isn't it terrifying?" Duke Di heard. When I got to the side of the coffin, I looked at the coffin and saw that the eyes were similar to walnuts, exposed, without any light at all, but I was really surprised to see the gray look. Nai said, Bishun, today this county is here to redress your grievances. If you have a spirit, close your eyes quickly so that everyone can come forward. No matter what, I will interrogate your case and understand it. Who knows that even though he is dead, the evil spirits are really lingering. Mr. D just finished speaking and closed his eyes. All the servants, the idlers, etc. Everyone was amazed and said that this man was undoubtedly seeking death, otherwise why would it be so effective? Immediately Duke Di turned around, and a few brave officers inside took action first, carrying Bai Shun out of the coffin and placing it on the corpse, using reed mats to invite the sunlight. Wu Zuo came up and reported. The body has been in the ground for a long time, so the examination will begin. It may be difficult to show up. You need to clean yourself up before you can act in accordance with the law. Please tell me. Judge Di said, this county knows the reason, but his clothes are not torn and his limbs are still intact. We can still reduce it and check it, so as to avoid the pain of washing the deceased again. When Wu Zuo saw what Duke Di said, he had to gently take off the clothes of the corpse. The skin on the body was already rotten, and many rags were stuck to it. He wanted to do an examination, but the skin color was like dust. It seems that if you don't spray it with wine, you won't know where the scar is. I had to go back to the clearing. Duke Di ordered Tao Dashi to choose a wide open space, dig a deep pond, and get an iron pot from a nearby house. Boil a pot of hot water with others, soak it in a soft cloth, and wipe off the rags. He poured hot water all over his body and washed it once. Then he took a bowl of high-grain soju and sprayed it everywhere for a while. Cover the corpse with cloth. At this time, the corpse field was already crowded with people, and men and women were all crowded together, hoping that Su would be examined. I saw him starting from his head and face and ending at his lower abdomen step by step. He still hadn't reported any injuries, and everyone was already confused. When I saw him and the guards again, they lifted the body and turned it over. After checking the back and top of the body to the valley road, it was still the same as before, and no injuries were reported. Judge D was now anxious. After finishing the public case, I watched everyone take action. Now that the upper body has been tested, we have to examine the lower half of the legs and feet. All the skin and joints can be inspected, and no scars can be found. Wu Zuo had no choice but to come and report to Duke Di, saying, the little man is on this mission. He has always tested the law, and it has always been divided into positive and negative sides. If there is no injury in these two places, he can use a silver sign to check the harm caused by taking poison. There are no injuries on Bai Shun's body, please tell me. Judge D has not yet opened his mouth. Mrs. Zhou had already grabbed Suzhua and said angrily. It has been a year since my husband died. My grandfather made a false accusation for no reason, saying that his death was unknown. He opened the coffin and examined it. Now he is completely unharmed, and he asked for a silver signature to enter his mouth. Isn't that just prevarication without words? You want to do this to harm people. No matter he died of a sudden illness, or even if this dog officer saw the flaw. It is because the poisonous gas in his abdomen has been taking effect for a year. How can it be that there is no injury and no poison in the whole body, but there is poison in the abdomen? He doesn't understand reason. You have been taught to serve as a sergeant for more than 1 year. Why do you obey his order and make the deceased suffer? This is impossible. As he said this, he grabbed Wu Zhua and cried endlessly. Di Gong said. This county has made an agreement with you. If the deceased is not injured, we will sit down willingly. This official matter was already submitted to the Constitution in detail yesterday, so how can we be interested in stalling it? However, autopsy has always shown that if there is no external injury, the internal abdomen must be examined. This is the law. Why do you seize the official position and act recklessly? Don't you know the king's law? Don't put it down quickly and let him test the abdomen again. If Gua is still unharmed, this county will definitely sit down, so don't be rude at this time. Zhou said. I don't think you need to be serious. Although there are no injuries at this moment, you can still lie about it. If you are against the deceased, and after the examination, there is still no poison, I am afraid that you will not be able to cover up the crime of sitting back. Some words. It was said that Wu Zhua did not dare to take action. I don't know what Duke Di was like at that time, but he'll explain it next time. Chapter 10, The evil whore obstructed the coffin from being collected by the wise magistrate sincerely staying in the temple. Chapter 10. But he said what Mr. Zhou said, I wish Di Gong didn't need to sign with silver. Di Gong said, there are no injuries in this county. It is reasonable to plead guilty. How can we treat human life as a child's play? Instead, I want to hide it. Since there are no injuries on the front and the negative side, the inside must be inspected before the internal examination is completed. It can be done. At that time, Mr. Zhou was not allowed to say anything more, and he was ordered to conduct another inspection as usual. Everyone saw that he first poured hot water into his mouth and gently rubbed his chest twice. He spit it out from his mouth 2 or 3 more times, and then took out a thin silver stick. About 8 inches, it was inserted through the throat. After a pause, Mr. D was asked to sign. When Judge D arrived in front of the corpse, he saw that the man had pulled out the stick, but the color remained unchanged. He said to Mr. D. This fact is strange, as all fatal wounds should appear after such examination. There are no scars now. I don't dare to take on this matter. I would like to ask the Great Master to seal it first, and then ask the neighboring seals to verify it. Or send another elderly widower to come for re-examination. At this time, Judge D was anxious and said, although this county is worried about Meng Lang, why did the deceased come to show his spirit? The eyes that were closed just now are our proof. How could it be so effective if the murder was not unjust? Immediately said to Mr. Zhou, there are no scars at this time. I have to apply for the details according to the regulations and plead guilty according to the circumstances. But the deceased has suffered, and he can no longer leave his body exposed and abandoned here. Just put him in the coffin and seal it temporarily. Ms. Zhou didn't wait for him to finish speaking. She had already smashed the coffin in which he was buried, and cried, I said he died of illness before. You are such a dog, you must have an examination. Now that there are no injuries, you want to bury him again. Is this what an official does? Even though we are common people, we cannot torture innocent people without breaking the law. Yesterday, torture was used to extract confessions, and now people's lives are taken care of. How can this be done? Now that the coffin has been opened, it can no longer be buried. We, the common people, cannot be deceived like this. If the case remains unsolved, the coffin cannot be collected. If no injuries can be found, I will fight for your life on the charge of insulting the officer. After saying that, he walked up and grabbed Judge D. Mrs. Tang saw her daughter-in-law like this. Then he came over, and the two of them were together, and they kept yelling. At this point, Judge D had no choice but to listen to her pestering. All those idle people saw that Duke D was an embarrassment and knew that he was a good official. They all came up and said to Mrs. Zhou, you woman, you don't understand. Your husband has already suffered the pain of being washed away. If you don't bury him now, are you going to let him be exposed? Since I allow you to plead guilty in detail, I'm sorry. I'm not lying to you either. And no one knows about this, and even if they want to cover it up, they can't. I see it's useless for you to mess around here, it would be better to bury the body first, go to the city with him, and wait for the letter at the yamen, which is the right thing to do. Seeing that everyone was speaking in unison, Mrs. Zhou thought that I was just making a fuss like this to prevent him from checking again next time. It would be rare for him to collect the coffin, and then nothing would happen. Mrs. Zhou said. It was not me who made my husband suffer, but this dog official was innocently looking for an opportunity. Since he made the complaint on his own, I just sat guard at his yamen. Although I am enthroned now, I refused to plead guilty at that time. Don't blame me for causing trouble in the court, he said, letting go and letting everyone arrange it. But that old coffin. It has been broken up for her. I had no choice but to rush to Huanghua town and buy a thin coffin, which was brought up in the evening. Immediately, he was hastily buried, the shield was left in place, marked for storage, and then he led the crowd towards Huanghua town. Just stay at the same inn as last time. The Tang family was released first, but the Zhou family was still in custody. All the instructions have been completed, and it has been a long time since the lamp was turned on. When Di Gong saw that everyone had dispersed, he was really doubtful. He saw Hong Liang coming in from outside. He said to Mr. Judge, I was ordered to investigate that young man, whose surname is Chen and whose name is Ruipeng. He opened a shop in this town. Because he and Bai Shun were neighbors during his lifetime, it is a pity that he died. As for the case, we may not know it. However, we know that when Bai Shun was still alive, Zhou often laughed in front of the street, which was not a woman's behavior. Although Bai Shun was restrained several times. They just kept making noises, and after his death, he didn't leave the door all day long. Even outsiders are unwilling to see him. It's at this end, so it's confusing. Since there is no evidence at this time, how to deal with this matter? From the perspective of the deceased, there is no doubt that he was wronged, even if there were no injuries. It's not easy to torture him, so I still have to find a way. Moreover, the case of the 6 concubines has been going on for half a month, and neither Mrs. Chiao nor Ma Rong have been able to find the murderer. 2 cases in succession, both of which came out of nowhere, could not be settled in a short period of time. Although the uncle is not focused on fame, human life is at stake. I also need to take care of myself. The 2 of them were talking in the inn when they suddenly heard a lot of people outside and crying. When they arrived, Hong Liang suspected that the Tang family had come to cause trouble. He had heard someone shouting outside, ask Mr. D. Now Zhongjin, although it is a human life case. It can't be this urgent. It's not like I won't help you get justice. Take a good rest, explain clearly, and we'll get back to you. How do you know he is your husband? Hong Liang knew that something else had happened, so he rushed over to visit. Unexpectedly, it was Lu Yu, the family member of the unknown man who was killed, who came to complain. Hong Liang returned to Judge D at that time and ordered someone to bring him in. When Judge D saw that she was a woman in her 40s, with unkempt hair and face full of tears, she burst into tears and knelt on the ground. Call the master directly to redress the injustice. Judge D asked, whose family are you from? How do you know that? Is that your husband? To be honest, this county likes to increase arrests. The woman said, the little woman's surname is Wang, her natal family is Chiu, and her husband's name is Wang Hong, who specializes in pushing carts. She lives in the area where the drainage ditch is managed. I was 30 or 40 miles away from Luyuan. Because my neighbor was sick that day, I asked my husband to go to Tsufu to report the news. Bai Yuanhong came and told me that I would rush back in one day, so I got up and went at the 3rd watch. Who would have thought that in the evening? Never come back. At first I was suspicious that he was delayed, but after waiting for several days, the people from Tsufu